I do think that one of the things that we're learning, and this is particularly true on the sustainability side, is that every category and every product really within certain categories are perceived slightly differently. So the same person will have different expectations, like say on the sustainability side for milk and dairy products than they would for chips, even if they're hardcore evangelists for climate change. And then the same, by the way, is true for health.
So there's the data quality is to compromise to say the least. The effort is really expensive. It's really slow. It's all of that clunkiness of physical product testing is the world I come from. The key to unlocking product success is consumer insight and hard data to power all the decisions that you're making.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Startup CPG podcast. Today, we are tackling a totally fascinating topic. It's what do health and sustainability really mean to consumers when it comes to CPG? There is so much to consider. There's government health policy, there's brands' own messaging, there's consumer education and beliefs, and how do people actually interpret your product when they get it based off the taste and packaging? Today, we're welcoming Sam Cass. He is the former White House chef and senior policy advisor for nutrition under President Obama. He's also the co-chair of the board for PLEZi, which is a better for you hydration brand by Michelle Obama, and also he's a partner at Acre Ventures. We're also joined by Dana Kim, who is the founder and CEO of Highlight. It's a product testing platform that helps brands actually understand what consumers think about their products. She's going to help us learn all about what the data says about consumers when it comes to health and sustainability and what they think of all of our products. I love this discussion so much. I know you will too. All right, here we go. All right. Hello, everybody. I am very excited to tackle a pretty interesting topic today. So I've got two guests. I've got Sam and Dana on. And what I really want to talk about is like, what do health and sustainability actually mean to consumers? The reason that I want to get into this is because I think all of us as brands, most of us anyways, are coming up with better for you versions of different products that are out there or coming out with something that we want to improve the CPG ecosystem in one way, often health or sustainability. But what do consumers actually think about all of that, right? And, will they think the thing about our brand that we think about our brand? And how will they interpret all of the messaging that we really try to get through to them, but is often very difficult to actually do? So we've got two awesome guests on here today. We've got Sam Cass and Dana Kim. So first of all, maybe I'll just come to you guys for some introduction. So Sam, do you mind kicking us off, please?
Sure. Great to be with you. I ran food policy in the Obama administration for President Obama and ran Michelle's big health campaign called Let's Move. I am now a partner at Acre Ventures, which is investing in climate change, environmental health, human health through food and ag systems broadly, including and very proudly into our more esteemed guest Dana and her company Highlight. Um, and I'm a co-chair of a company called PLEZi, where Michelle is a co-founder of that, as well as a co-founder of a company called Spring Food. So definitely actively working on all of these issues.
All right, very busy. Okay, Dana, coming to you.
Awesome. Okay, I only have one title, in contrast to Sam, and that is founder and CEO of Highlight. Fortunate to be a portfolio company of Acre, which Sam is a partner of. But we are a physical product testing platform. So Nestle, Pepsi, P&G, but also Momofuku, Sol de Janeiro, some of the more disruptive brands in today's world are customers of Highlight. They use Highlight to run really scaled, quality, effective product research with consumers. And they're running really cool tests to do competitive benchmarking, claim substantiation, pre-launch formulation testing, essentially gathering really critical consumer insights to answer critical business questions to win in this world. We answer a lot in terms of physical product performance, a lot in terms of health, and a lot in terms of sustainability. So excited to share a bit more about what we learned with you today.
All right, great. So I think it's really cool to have both of you here because Sam, you obviously go very deep on nutrition and what do different parties, including the administration and the former administration, think about nutrition, as well as Dana, who you are on the front lines of this. You are testing with consumers. What do they actually think about these brands? So let's get into it. So, Sam, I'm sorry, this is a super basic question, but I think probably everybody wants to know what is it like? Because you were the White House chef for President Obama and the First Lady. Like, come on, what was that like? Give us some info.
Yeah, I guess I realized I forgot the chef part, didn't I? I guess the cooking side felt sort of like my side hustle. It was sort of my my other job there. Look, it was an amazing run, and I had a pretty unique experience. Both as running food policy and trying to build an issue around family and family health and children's health for the first time really in modern history, certainly out of the White House, and cooking dinner for the family, and then sort of being the resident friend, working out with them in the morning or playing pool with the president at night. So I had a pretty deep and multifaceted role there, I guess, and it was intense. It was exhausting. It was exhilarating. It was a true honor. And you know, we got a lot done and something that I'm very proud of. And I think we'll always sort of chase the feeling of having impacted that kind of scale, at such a young age is something that is hard to replicate. And, um, you know, we'll always try to find ways to even come, anywhere close to having that kind of impact again.
So that was a pretty novel initiative from what I understand. What was there before that, and how did it come about for you to be working on that and coming up with those kind of policies?
So I was cooking for the Obamas in Chicago during the campaign. And, Michelle really saw the impact, on her kids and on herself of starting to change the way that they were eating. And I was already very focused on health and the issues that we were grappling with. And so as she experienced that and, we would spend many, many hours, talking about what was happening in the world, she felt like it would be a very important issue to take on if we were lucky enough to make it to the White House. And she actually writes about this in her book. We got very carried away one night, dreaming of all the things we could do, planning a garden, and then doing a big health initiative for kids and dealing with schools and all this stuff. And then you know, sh- we just started laughing so hard because we remember this dude named Barack Hussein Obama is 30 points down in the polls. Nobody knows who he is. He's like, this isn't going to work out. And so we got gotten very carried away in our dreaming. But we were wrong, thankfully. And so when we got to the White House, we knew we were going to do the garden. That was predetermined. And our intent was to do a really big health campaign for kids and families, but we wanted to sort of see what was the response of the nation. How do people react to the garden? Was there a real kind of openness to try to make some progress on these issues? And the answer was decidedly yes. So off we went.
All right. And what kind of eaters are the Obamas? If you can give us some info, what are they like? Are they eating the same kind of food as regular old me, or are they cooking them up some specialty foreign dishes? What's going on?
I used to be able to say when I was in the White House that that was top secret information I didn't have to disclose. That was, of course, not true, but I used to say that and like, people believe me. That is obviously, definitely not true now. Um, but they are very simple, you know. There's they are as you would hope they would be. They're really down to earth, easygoing. And when we were in the White House, we worked very hard to make the experience feel normal, like it was really a home. I mean, the girls were young, and Michelle didn't want them to feel like they were living in a hotel. Like, the butlers when we first got there, they all wore tuxedos like for dinner, and she was like, "Those tuxedos gotta go," and so dinner was one plate. There was no courses. It was one plate every night. Simple, easily recognizable food, nothing fancy at all. She likes to throw down sometimes and, enjoy herself. She loves good food. He's always a very simple, practical eater. Nothing fancy for him ever.
All right. I have to just tell a quick Malia Obama story, which is I was
Okay.
flying back from DC to LA after Thanksgiving, and I was lucky. I got upgraded. I was flying a lot, and then this woman boards and sits next to me, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was like working, And then the flight attendant comes over and just starts making a really big deal out of the person next to me, and I couldn't really tell, but then I, like, kinda looked over, I'm like, "I don't know." The flight attendant was like, "I'm such a fan, like, I watched you grow up." I was like, "Who is this person?" I really didn't know. And then, like, when you're on a flight, pretty much the only acceptable time to talk to somebody is during the meal, right? And, like, I think her phone wasn't charged and it was cracked, and she was just kinda sitting there maybe reading, and so during the meal, I'm like, "Hey, how's it where you live you from DC?" She was like, "Oh, kind of, kind of from all over." And, I'm from DC, and, I still had no idea who she was, and then, like, eventually figured out where she went to high school, which famously is, where the Obama kids went to high school. And so I think I've been talking to her for, like, 10, 15 minutes. She was so nice and, like, interested in what I was working on and everything, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm an idiot." Like, I even, like, realized who she was. But oh my gosh, I just was really struck by how down to earth, and we had such a pleasant conversation, was learning about some of her professional interests, like, filming, and she was, like, told me she was really interested in movies and, like, dark comedies and stuff. It was super cool. So, anyways, big celebrity story from me, and I had switched seats at the end, like, the guy in front of me, who was actually a very famous actor, like, sort of he got up and recognized her and looked at me like, "Who is this jerk off that it gets to sit next to her?" And he told me later, like, "That was supposed to be my seat." So, anyways, I was very excited about it. Alright, um, but yeah, back to, like, the administration and I guess more of the policy work that you were doing then. Like, so, okay, now we know a little bit about what they eat personally, but how would they and you have looked at what healthy food is, then, and also how is that evolving maybe in your mind now?
Well, that's a big can of worms. The now part is a can of worms, which we can go there if you want. But back then, um, uh, we w started with what the data and science said about, to the best of the science ability, describe what a person should be eating on a daily basis, what they were eating, what the country was generally consuming, and, where are the problem spots and where are the opportunities to try to move the country in a different direction. And the moving the country in a different direction, would be rooted in what are the policies that we could do, like around school nutrition, that we had some control over, that could, be highly impactful. What businesses can we try to engage with and get them to make changes in how they're producing food? And we did a lot of that. And then I think most importantly, in some ways, although hardest to get credit for or track with metrics of any kind, is how do you shift the culture and the values that we have around what we eat. And if we don't fundamentally shift the culture so that we are saying we care about the nutritional value of the food we're eating, we care about the impact on the planet and our ability to feed ourselves in the future, then we're only going to get so far, both on the policy standpoint as well as what businesses, both big and small, are going to do from a product standpoint. So that's how we started thinking about it, and sort of set off with a strategy to try to move all those areas forward.
So, sounds like you guys did a lot, but also, like, how much can you do when people just kinda wanna eat stuff that we are all used to eating, right? Um, so, so it sounds like you think that really is the biggest obstacle. Maybe there are probably a lot of, like, bureaucratic obstacles also, like, you wanna get certain policies done, but there are a lot of lobbyists and things, kinda preventing you from doing that. But, yeah, I mean, when the consumers demand something also, that helps.
No, I would say, yeah, the challenges and barriers were multifaceted, to say the least. It was a hyper-partisan time, as it still is, obviously, although this issue is changing a little bit on that, in ways that are very weird, but maybe good, hopefully good. Um, but, yeah, we were met with resistance at every turn by the other party. And there's also just a limitation around how what the government can actually do to shape what ends up on your plate. I think it's really overstated in people's minds how much control we have. Uh, there is definitely huge impact that the government can have on certain areas, particularly like school food or what's served in the military, where we're really directly deciding the standards by which people who are producing that food have to operate within. But, like, for anybody on their kitchen table or a restaurant owner serving in a restaurant, the government is not really that well positioned to shape that. There's ag policies that definitely have had an impact, certainly in the past, and still do in some ways today for sure, but it's not anywhere near as profound as I think people's perception of it is. Um, but I think then you run into the culture and you run into the complexities of what it means to be human on planet Earth eating at least 3 times a day, if we're lucky, but many of us more than that. And food is, you know, not only how we nourish ourselves, but it's also how we express our very identities. It's really who we are, and it's also how we express who we're not. It's how we show love to each other, and it's habits and tastes that have been shaped for literally our entire lives. And so when you're trying to change how we eat, you're trying to change people at their very core. And everybody's an expert, Unlike, energy policy where nobody knows anything about that. Everybody's an expert on food. And so it makes changing it very complicated and very personal. And so from a government standpoint, it's a treacherous path to say the least.
So yeah, that makes sense. And I'm thinking about the kind of subsidies that people talk about on different kinds of food, and then also thinking back on the food pyramid and all of the things that I hear from people about how that was influenced by different lobbyist groups, and it's like outdated. But you know,
Hold on, I just have to correct you. We got rid of that. I helped get rid of the food pyramid is no more. It's been replaced with My Plate, which was not influenced by company, lobbyists. But yes, there's been plenty of, look, nutrition education and information has evolved a lot. We've learned a lot. The nutrition community science has gotten some things wrong in the past, and it's very complex science. And it's hard to know, and there's a lot of people are different, and so people have different needs. So there's that part, it will always be evolving. The cynicism, I think, is more than it needs to be, though, in terms of the reality of how it actually works.
so if you could have just gotten rid of all the obstacles, or if you could even do that now, based off what you think people actually want and should have versus what is actually out there, what would you do?
Shit, man, that's a big question. I mean, it's one that's hard to answer, given you know that is so not in my worldview about how I think, given that's not possible. But I think the things that have taken us really off course is the plethora of sugar the various forms of sugar in a whole host of products that would never otherwise be there, and the products that it would be there are extraordinarily high levels. Portion sizes in general have exploded and are a major driver of the amount of calories we're consuming. So on the health side, I would really work to, uh, you know, dramatically reduce the amount of sugar in our diet and dramatically reduce the portions that we are eating. If we did that, we'd go a long, long way at fixing, people's diets. There's some of the more, even if it's not sugar based, the hyper processed foods, that are, you know, nutritionally devoid should if I could, I'd just get rid of them. I mean, I don't there's some chips I probably keep, a couple of things that that I like that I would keep, but like, but besides that, I think those would have to go. And I think on the climate side, and this is very important, yeah, I think we would have to transition our systems to far more regenerative agriculture. We have to dramatically reduce the amount of animal protein we're consuming, because the planet simply cannot sustain, uh, that level of consumption. And that's running, squarely into some of these trends and all these influencers on social media saying like you should literally only eat steak. And it's like, well, that's fine, but there will be only a handful of people able to do that in the future. Um, and it comes at a tremendous cost to society as the environment and continues to be degraded at alarming rates. So I think, balancing, nutrient density and doing it in a way that allows for future generations to be able to sustain themselves and feed themselves is the balance we always have to keep in mind. But yeah, so I think you have to kind of really work on both.
All right, this is super interesting. I have so many more questions, but I really want to loop in Dana now because, yeah, Dana, like I mentioned, You are kind of on the front lines here. You are talking to consumers all the time. There are a lot of brands that work with you specifically for consumer testing, right? So they're getting products in the stuff that you guys send out and you ask consumers for their feedback. What do you think health and sustainability mean in the minds of consumers?
Yeah. I love all these big, broad questions that Sam and I can take anywhere. So we do tons of research with consumers of all ages, products of all categories, companies of all sizes and stages. So I feel like we have some pretty unique and zoomed out perspective on what consumers think of consumer products, how they make choices, how they decide what to buy for the first time and repeat over time. Um, we when we talk about health and sustainability, it is frequently on the product level because we are running physical product testing. And the interesting thing about products and what drives purchase of products is that for food and bev, like we're talking about, the three big purchase drivers that haven't hasn't changed, will not change for a long time, are taste, cost, and convenience. Nowhere in that list is health, nowhere in that list is sustainability, and we see those 2 factors having sort of orthogonal, adjacent influence to those 3 purchase drivers, but at the end of the day, if you are a chip company, you need a chip that tastes good, that costs an amount that you're willing to pay, and is within reach for your whatever occasion you need it for. For beauty, it's efficacy, cost, convenience. There are some very clear, tried and true, not changing drivers of purchase that consumers, whether they'll admit it or not, whether they'll vocalize that or not, are relying on for product purchases. So when brands come to us asking, like, what do consumers think about in terms of health? What do consumers think about in terms of sustainability? Sure, we have lots of awesome custom research that we've run on a more global scale. We are very, very pointed in saying we need to get very specific about your product because the health implications, sustainability implications, and signals you can give vary greatly depending on whether you're a chip versus a fruit snack versus an apple. And whether your target audience is the Gen Pop Walmart customer or it's the Erewhon tastemaker per se. So, um, long way of saying, there is real diversity in thought across the board, depending on who you are talking to. Um, I think it's fair to say health and sustainability are creeping up in terms of what consumers care about in that list of purchase drivers, but it still hasn't eclipsed that like fundamental what you need to get right in order to have a successful product and therefore a successful brand.
Okay, so taste, cost, and convenience. Convenience meaning it's available near me, it's at stores, or the convenience of the packaging, or can you tell me?
Yeah, all of the above. It needs to fit into my routine easily. There can't be friction in procuring it. There can't be friction in literally opening it. It needs to be easy, an easy experience.
Okay, and I also really like the point you're making about health and sustainability. Like it really, how you communicate that on a product level, it really does have a lot to do with who are you actually trying to talk to, right? Because yeah, maybe the barrier is not going to be as high if you're trying to talk to a Walmart consumer, convincing them that your chip is better than a Dorito, right? There are probably a lot of there's low hanging fruit there that you can go for. Whereas if you're going for the tastemaker Erewhon consumer, because I've demoed there a lot and they give me a lot of flack no matter what. Like someone has a problem with everything, right? Whereas it may be a higher order benefit that you need to give them because you're not convincing them it's better than Doritos because they don't eat Doritos. You're convincing them it's better than flaxseed or something like raw that they're eating because they're all pretty healthy already. So I see that makes a lot of sense that you really need to figure out your strategy and what health benefits you're trying to convey before you figure out even how to talk about it.
Yeah, and there are absolutely like staying on the food train. For snacks, for example, we just ran some custom research in partnership with Rachel Krupa at the Gridsmart. And we learned some really interesting global takeaways and put some hard numbers to um, what are facts that we can report on that are relevant and across the board. One of the stats we came away with was 94% of consumers are actively seeking sustainable packaging, meaning um, it's either recyclable, it's not single serve, it has some recyclable iconography. It is so superficial and so basic and so simple, but it is a really important signal for consumers to make them feel good that I'm buying a sustainable product.
Now, what does seek mean? They're seeking it. Does it mean like, oh, it'd be good, or does it mean I am going to buy things because and I'm gonna check and I'm gonna think about it and maybe do they know about it also because they're often it's like the education is harder to come by.
Yeah, seek meaning, like, it is in their consideration set. If they're buying something that is not sustainable, they'll feel bad about it. If they're buying something that is sustainable, they will feel good about it. It's still again, if it doesn't eclipse taste, cost, convenience in terms of purchase drivers, but it is something that, is becoming more and more acute, especially for the younger generations.
And what do you think the biggest violators of that are? Like packaging that they're gonna look at and be like, "Oh no, I'm gonna feel bad if I buy this thing a lot."
Most frequently, it's, use of plastic, if something is has a high ratio to product, uh, ratio of plastic to product, and it feels wasteful. Thick packaging, so the volume of plastic packaging is something that will actively make consumers feel bad. When previously it might not be a consideration in the consideration set, it can signal like, "Whoa, I feel like a bad consumer for purchasing this and having to throw it away." The other, like I mentioned, is single serve, packaging. So, if there is, just it goes back to that sort of plastic to product ratio, but, if there is a, inordinate amount of material used for the amount of product actually there, it feels wasteful. And Sam and I talk about this all the time. It's some of it is real, and there's been real marketing around plastic packaging being bad for the environment, and there's marketing with, in the oceans, the little soda can, organizer being around animals' necks, and there's real marketing around, recycling being important. But there's some of it is not as rational. Some of it is really comes down to feeling and what makes people feel bad and what makes people feel good. Um, and so, yeah, the sustainable packaging and all the symbols and signals of sustainable packaging make people feel good, um, in ways that sometimes you can't even really quantify or, understand.
We'll be right back. Hey, you got the big retailer. Huzzah! But growth is hard work, and with great power comes great responsibility to your partners. As you scale together, both of you are going to sleep better at night knowing you are EDI compliant with our friends at SPS Commerce. Solutions from SPS Commerce help you automate order processing, making sure you're compliant with your big new juicy account and the rest of your trading partners and sales channels so you can stay focused on growing your business while the expert team from SPS Commerce handles all the details. Learn more at spscommerce.com/startupcpg. That's spscommerce.com/startupcpg, or check out the link in the show notes. I gotcha. So, okay, back to that data point though. So, generally, everybody, at least the people who shop at GoodSmart, are very interested in convenience is on their mind. And, by the way, this is not like even if we were doing this research at Air One, it's probably 100%, right? Because, that's where the trends really start around health and, environmental awareness, I would say. And so for you to be getting that kind of data in New York means it's not just our West Coast, perfect living friends.
I will clarify. So the beauty of this research was we used the Highlight community, which is nationwide representative for a Gen Pop read, and then we boosted that with the tastemakers of the Good Smart, and the Good Smart community. So we got sort of um, mass America, and then we got some more like coastal, um, more trend setters, tastemakers is what we called them.
Okay, cool. Any differences that you saw there between really interesting to see between some of the tastemaker consumers and the mass consumers, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so some through lines, and it's consistencies across both groups. There is a real movement towards, and we're focusing on food and snacks here, but there's a real movement towards back to basics. So minimally processed um, things, proteins, for example, high protein being really important, but no longer looking for plant-based protein, actually looking for animal protein. Whey no longer being a protein that people are against because it is non-vegan. There's an absolute sort of back to basics, real food, real products, avoiding processed food across the board. High protein, I'm sure you've heard a ton about, and I think you've even done some podcasts with high protein founders. And low sugar are absolutely uh, consistent across the consumer base. The differences come down to actually levels of education and how engaged people are in the category, and the specifics when you go beyond just wanting low sugar product. So there are we actually like dug into what sugar content is acceptable, what kinds of sugars are acceptable, what sugars do you prefer? Is it monk fruit? Is it erythritol? Is it aspartame? What's acceptable versus what is not. And the thresholds for what is acceptable versus not varied depending on tastemaker versus mass consumer. And what is the sugar, what is the actual sugar itself, or what is the actual sweetener itself, was more important for tastemakers versus for the general population. It was more important to have just low sugar, no matter the sort of sweeteners involved, if that makes sense.
I mean, that's all really interesting stuff. I wanna know the answers to all of that. Is there how can people see some of the results of all of that around the different kinds of sugars and sweeteners and all of that?
Yeah, we'll share the report. I'll share the link with you, Danielle, so you can share with your community. But
All right, check the show notes, people. There's gonna be a hot drop there.
I think, well, if I just add, I mean, I do think that one of the things that we're learning, and this is particularly true on the sustainability side, is that every category and every product really within certain categories are perceived slightly differently. So the same person will have different expectations, like say on the sustainability side for milk and dairy products than they would for chips, even if they're hardcore evangelists for climate change. And then the same, by the way, is true for health. And different cues, different words and symbols will be perceived in a different way depending on the product, which is why the testing that Highlight is and their capabilities to Highlight is so valuable to brands, because there's a lot of nuance here that if you're just doing like a little test on a computer screen to get your survey done, or going by your gut, it turns out like that's not good enough in the modern era, and we're finding that Highlight's capabilities are really transforming how companies are designing their products and are going to market with their products, even sometimes in subtle ways that make a huge difference. And there's a lot of companies who have focused really hard on their actual product, particularly from a say from a sustainability standpoint. But you put it in the wrong package, and people's experience with the product will be like, this is a highly unsustainable product. But actually, they've done a lot of work, spent a lot of money to have what's inside be top notch. But so these things can fall down in subtle ways, and that's why you know the work that Highlight's been doing with brands has been really powerful, and it's why we're here, as investors, because I believe there's a chance here to crack, um, uh, you know companies' abilities to market and sell products that are truly healthier and are truly more sustainable in a way that just hasn't gotten the scale that we need.
I mean, even beyond just trying to figure out what consumers think about your product on health and sustainability, I just believe really strongly in getting feedback from people who are not your friends and who you didn't beg to try your product because they'll all be nice to you. And even me, if you corner me at a trade show and ask me to try your product, I'm gonna be like, it's good, unless someone's like, hey, I actually want your real feedback. And then I will give it to them. But most people, I think it's very hard to just get blind, authentic feedback. Even when you're demoing in person, you might get a little bit more of it, but it's still hard because people want to please other people. It's hard to just look someone and tell them that their product is not good, right? And so the testing box I mean, it's very important to get that at the early stage too, because it can save you years of working on something that ultimately was very flawed.
Totally. I mean, look, and I think we all have our biases and we're all in bubbles. I mean, you've said it now a few times, reference Erewhon as sort of like the epicenter of product development and change. Dude, and that is true in some levels, but it's like the most like elite, high-end, pretty monolithic group of people who shop there, who all kinda more or less think the same, looking for the same thing, and have a shared set of experiences, rooted in extremely high-priced products. And if you're trying to build with all due I love Erewhon, so I'm with you on that. I'm not pointing any fingers. If I lived in LA, I'd be there all the time. So, it's also important that unless you just wanna build a company for Erewhon, and if you do, you should stop now. Uh, but if you're trying to build a company that has a much broader reach, then you need to talk to the people who are actually you want to consume your products. And something that is a perfect fit for Erewhon is one thing, but if you wanna sell it in Columbus, Ohio, and you wanna sell it in Pittsburgh, and you wanna sell it all over the country, those are people with very different set of experiences, tastes, perceptions, and on some levels, values. And so it depends on, what your ambition for your company is. But whoever you're trying to sell to, you should probably make sure you're getting some feedback from them because it will surprise you. What you see is oftentimes not what they experience, and so your intention is not what they experience. And the very small amount of resources invested in the beginning on that can save you millions and millions of dollars and potentially save your company, frankly, if you spend the time and the resource to get it right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think, at least in my experience, okay, when I ran a beverage brand before, I think if I had done some testing on it at the onset, I think we would have realized what we thought about the product is not what consumers thought about the product. Especially, we had a couple different product lines, and we're like, no, it says it so clearly on the can. I think if we had tested, people would have been like, this is confusing. I don't know what all these different things are. Please don't confuse me. Just tell me straight what this is. And there are too many things on your can. I don't really even know what this is. Let me just read one thing. I think that's probably what we would have found that would have been helpful because that would have saved us a couple product lines, which is a lot of money and effort and selling things in and then having to try to swap them out or unwind them, right? Where even the brand that I ran, ultimately we ended up discontinuing every single SKU that we launched with and eventually just moving to a completely different product line. So yeah, I mean, some testing, I don't, yeah, testing probably would have been helpful. I kind of wonder, Dana, though, if I had tested it, would I have been able to hear it? Or would I have just been looking for it to confirm the things that I really thought about it? Like when founders work with you guys and test the stuff, can they act on the feedback? Like, can you tell who can and who can't, or do they argue with you about the feedback?
It's such a good question, and the answer is, like, there's 2 types of founders and 2 types of brand owners. One gets hard feedback and is in denial, and one gets hard feedback and is so grateful for all the future mistakes avoided. In either case, we are proud of ourselves for doing the job, but the beauty of what Highlight does is we add rigor and sophistication and actual statistical significance, quantitative hard data and facts to deliver to your team. So when we're telling you that the majority of consumers are confused by the message on your can, you need to really create a story and a narrative in your brain that is quite creative to deny that fact. And we're running again quantitative and level analyses so that you can feel confident that the data is not just something we heard at the market or something one consumer said or something that's anecdotal and not representative. It is our job as a software and as a team to ensure that you trust the data and you can make the decisions that you want from the data. So
I
it's
like that a lot because when people ask me for feedback, especially if it's around marketing, I always start it by being like, "Look, I'm just one guy, and I don't know a lot about marketing, but here's a bunch of things I don't like about it. But don't change it based on me because I'm just one guy." So I wish I had like some ammo of, "Hey, yes, I just tested it with 500 people, and here is the proof that the thing that I think is actually true, although many times it would not be true." Um, and when you guys test it, how many? Can you just tell me how it works exactly? So how many people does it go out to? How do you collect the feedback on it? How do you actually give brands that feedback?
Yep, yep. So Taking a step back, my first job out of college and where I spent the bulk of my career prior to Highlight was a consumer research product testing agency. So I was for many years standing in malls, grocery stores, focus group facilities on behalf of the Fortune 100, handing product out one by one, saying, "Hey, wait! Hey, wait! Stop right there! Family Dollar shopper in the middle of Central Florida. Try this new Dr. Pepper. Tell me what you think." And that was how we gathered physical product feedback, and we would do that for weeks at a time to get to a sample size we felt good about. And we would deliver this data back to these multi-billion-dollar brands, with one eye closed because we were unsure of the data quality because this is, feedback given after I'm running after you in a store with a grocery with a gift card, grocery store gift card. And so the
Although, like, in New York, I hate, like, everybody is on every corner trying to get you to stop and talk about some issue and sign something. But, I mean, with food testing, it's amazing. I used to work for Mars Chocolate, and there would be a huge line every time they wanted to test a new M&M or something like that. So, I mean, running after somebody with a Dr. Pepper, so I feel like they're gonna receive that better.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the data quality is to compromise to say the least. The effort is really expensive. It's really slow. It's, all of that clunkiness of physical product testing is the world I come from. So Highlight was built on this like premise of the world of consumer products is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's only getting harder for everyone in the CPG community, especially in the startup CPG community, to win and compete in a very saturated and competitive CPG landscape. The key to unlocking product success is consumer insight and hard data to power all the decisions that you're making. So, how can I build a platform to actually power product success by way of consumer insight is the mission of Highlight. So that's the foundational why we exist. How we power product success or prevent product failure is we have a community of testers. We have integrated logistics. So we have a actually fulfillment centers that are able to ship products to those testers. And then we have really beautiful research software where founders, brands, researchers can go in, target their audience, send product, and collect feedback really seamlessly. The most exciting part of the entire experience is once data is coming back and you're getting your feedback, we have a really powerful analytics suite where you see your data side by side, and you get the cold hard facts like we were talking about before. Well, I mentioned competitive testing, competitive benchmarking is a really big use case for our customers. When you see your product, say it's a better for you soda, total hypothetical, and it is, performing, and you've decided to run a test of that versus Poppy versus Olipop versus Sprite versus you name it, and you see the taste scores side by side with green, yellow, red across the board, it's pretty undeniable where you are winning, where you are losing, and the opportunities for improvement for your product. So, um, the ultimate output and outcome is you come to us with a product question or a consumer question or a brand question. You run the research to get you the data you need, and you're presented that data in a really powerful way. Um, I will also say, we've talked a ton about it depends on the audience, it depends on who you want to reach. We have a really robust community, so you could reach everyone from, women over 50 who are spending $100 plus on retinol per week, to teen gamers who are chewing gum 3 times a day, to anyone across the board. Or you can run a broader test with a broader audience, and then you can filter by segment and see like, wow, when I actually filter my data by Gen Z, this SKU is really resonating. Or when I filter my data by gender, I find that this flavor actually really pops with, she, her, hers. So there's lots of interesting insight that can come from testing across the life cycle.
We'll be right back.
All CPG brands need business insurance. Let's hope you don't have to use it, but if so, you better have a good policy. We get asked about it in Slack all the time. When do I need general liability, product liability, workers' comp, all that stuff? I always tag in our friends at Amelia Risk Insurance. Just talk to them. You will see what I mean. We use them personally. So does Fishwife, so many other brands from the community. They know you need coverage, but also you need to save money. So they will help you understand exactly what do you need and fight to find you the most affordable and effective policies. Reach out to them at ameliarisk.com. That's AMELIA risk.com. They're really happy to have a very friendly chat with you to get started. All right. So you can like, oh wow, all these rude comments came from the Erewhon shoppers. That's so weird. I actually I just remembered always used to play jokes on our team members at ours. And one of the days they were doing testing, we convinced one of my team members that it was because they were testing left Twix versus right Twix to see which was better. And he went and got in line. It was so good.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, put that on your list for testing. It's like when they did that whole campaign around it. Oh, it's so good. All right. So, Sam, obvious question. Did you guys test PLEZi? And what did you
Of
learn from it?
course.
What did you learn?
We absolutely tested pledging. Frankly, like I will not invest in a company at this point and not insist that they use Highlight for any product of any kind in any place. Um, and in fact, like I'll just say, I think data-driven decisions is kind of a modern theme. I'll be pretty confident that we're sort of using data to make decisions across the economy all the time, and increasingly so. I will say the food industry has been, and the consumer packaged goods industry in general, has been slower to some of that in a modern way, I think, than other parts of the economy. I think increasingly this will just be the standard way that decisions are made. Also, by the way, from a retail standpoint as well, we're starting to work with a number of the biggest retailers in the country. Right now, retailers are sort of doing it like a lot of early stage companies used to do. It's like, I like this one. It's like, I like this flavor, or this brand, this design looks good. I think in the future it's going to be straight data driven, and you know, the merchandiser for whatever category is going to get the data and decide which product, know ahead of time which product is resonating with their consumer base and make a data-driven decision. I actually find it completely insane, frankly, but that is not how it's done, and it's not how it's done at all. Now, lots of respect to those buyers. They are incredible. They've been at it a long time. They hold a ton of wisdom and expertise, but the data speaks for themselves, and it's going to bring down the miss rate, significantly for these retailers. So for me, it's definitely started. It's something I'm working a lot on. In a few years, I just think it's just going to be standard operating procedure. And so from a PLEZI standpoint, and frankly, other companies now that have gone through the highlight process, um, sometimes it confirms your instinct, like, yeah, that's our best flavor. Like, I like that one the best too. I knew it. I mean, I have a decent sense of what tastes good, given my recovering chef experience. Um, but um, but there's also times where it's like you thought you had a winner, and turns out it just wasn't. It's good, but it's not great. I think the thing where a lot of brands fall down on, like, you're trying to break in into a highly competitive category with giant incumbents, which is basically every category. It's being good is not good enough. Like, you have to be great to change people's behavior and get them to either consume something they normally haven't consumed, or to make a change, make a switch of something they've been consuming for quite some time. And, as good isn't good enough. So we had a couple products that, were scored kind of as good, maybe a bit better, and we realized that was not gonna work. And we went back and worked on the product and worked on that product and made it better. And I think that's where the risk is, right? Like good enough, like good but not good enough. So we had a lot of that. And I think um, that has helped push us, frankly, to make our products better. And we are fundamentally a better company, as a result of the data we got back from these tests. And there's something very different about setting product to somebody's home where they're tasting it as they would consume your product, and getting like real data, like real reaction
Mhm.
from somebody that's completely objective, that's on their own terms in their own time. That is a very different quality, as opposed to like the value prop testing that you do a big mass survey. what would your intent be? Like that can
Mhm.
give you some signals and direction in the very beginning, but that's you don't know if you got a winner from that when somebody says, "Yeah, that I by looking at that can, I think I would prefer to buy that over this." It's like that is worth basically nothing. So, so yeah, it's it will be a foundation of any company I'm involved in going forward.
Okay, so to try to tie some of the things we've been talking about together today, Sam. So if you think about just overall, health policy, and then also like how consumers think about health, how consumers told you they think about health with your product. What is Plezi trying to do? What's the impact that it wants to have, and how does it communicate that?
So, Plezi is trying to create a platform of products that are designed for young people, um, that are fundamentally healthier for them, but can compete with the hyper sugary, very sexy, brands that have been denigrating the health of society for a long time, but have a lot of market power and a lot of market share. And that is no easy task. And to do that, especially for young, when you're older, so a lot of these, kind of prebiotic sodas, the ones that have just transacted the big numbers. When you're marketing to like an older consumer, sort of really focused on their health, they're willing to sacrifice taste, if they think it's better for them. There's some portion, there's some segment of the market. It's not that big, but it's there. When you taste like these products, am I allowed to swear on this show,
I think so.
or you prefer not?
Yes, confidently,
I don't know any
especially.
other I don't know any other way to say it, like, when you taste like this thing, they just taste like shit. I don't know, I have no other word to describe how bad some of this stuff tastes, but they've been able to, like, kinda carve out a niche space. When you're trying to really disrupt big incumbents and you're trying to do it particularly with young people who are quite discerning both on, like, your brand, but also on a taste, and they're not willing to sacrifice taste, that's an interesting challenge. So we've worked really hard to reduce sugar dramatically, 75%, 70%, 60%, depending on the product. Um, uh, but not sacrifice most flavor experience, certainly in the beverage category for sure, but in many categories, is just rooted in sweetness. And it's been a sort of an arms race towards more sweet, taste better. And so it's a real challenge when that sort of standard of taste has been set, and that's what people have been used to tasting, to find ways to bring down the sugar and sweetness, but still hold the flavor and keep people, in your boat. And so that's been the hard work. And you know, so far we made a lot of progress. We just launched a hydration project with Steph Curry, which is just hitting the shelves and is doing very well. And we got a fizz product coming as well, sparkling product, which I'm also very proud of. And, you know, I think we got a shot.
I love it. I had this product in mind for Steph Curry, not that I know him, but I was like, wouldn't it be cool to launch? Because magnesium is a huge thing these days, and I was taking some magnesium gummies for sleep. I thought they were really cool. I was like, what if, we could launch a magnesium gummy and get him involved and call it night night? Like his gesture when he puts a team out for the count and he, like, puts his
Yeah,
hands
yeah,
next to
yeah,
his
yeah,
face, the
yeah,
night
yeah,
night.
yeah.
And I was like, "Wait, I think it might be a really good idea." I feel very stupid even saying it now, but I did look into it, and my trademark lawyer was like, "You should not do that. There is a very litigious company that will come after you for that." I was like, "All right, well, I guess that's why I
I
won't do
think
it."
I don't know. I think that's a good
Uh,
idea. Look, if we ever take that up, I'll cut you in. I promise. That's a
Night
great
night.
idea.
It's oh my
So
gosh, when
good.
he did that in the Olympics, I just watched the, ESP or Netflix documentary on it that was actually produced by the Obamas. And just rewatching him just go nuts in the finals, it was, like, just one of the most beautiful things in sport that I've ever seen, and he just put him out with a night night. It was beautiful, USA. Alright. So so I re yeah, okay, thank you for, telling me all about that and reminding me about my beautiful product idea. So, just, I guess, one more question, for you, Sam, which is so, yeah, you are a chef, right? And, a lot of what I would view as chefs are like, cooking like, real food, quote unquote, like, center plate protein dishes, like fresh veggies, that kind of stuff. But Plezi is a consumer packaged good. So what do you view as the role of CPG, consumer packaged goods, in what we would tell people and consumers would think is healthy and sustainable?
Like, it's a great and very complicated question, one full of controversy and no great answers. I think that, I think that, um, we have to meet people where they are, and I can close my eyes and envision a future, that is much more rooted in the kind of food I cook, the kind of lifestyle I live, the commitment to health and climate change sustainability that I have. But that doesn't get us very far. Um, I think trying to understand who we are as a nation, how we're consuming food, what our preferences are, and then asking ourselves, okay, how can we, as a company, and every single company should be asking themselves, and I find it deplorable when they're not, and most aren't, frankly, but should be asking themselves, how can we take the responsibility we have as a consumer packaged good as a food company, and frankly, it's true at any part of a consumer company, in my opinion, at this point, given the challenges that we face currently. And how can we, one, put a fundamentally better product from a health standpoint into the market? And how can we do that in a way that does not further degrade the health of the planet? And not because like you have to care about the health of the planet for the sake of the health of the planet. It's because our very lives depend on it, literally, and our kids and their kids' ability to have anywhere near the life quality that we've had is rooted in the decisions we're making now. And I no longer think that you could call your product a high quality product if it's destroying the planet. Like for me, that's a trash, low quality product. I don't see how you can say, you're a responsible company or even a high quality product if you're undermining the health of the people who are consuming, especially when 1 in 3 kids are affected with diabetes in this country. So I think what's really going to happen is not that the first, second, and third order of value that consumers are shopping for that Dana outlined in the beginning is ever going to change. I think it is going to get redefined. And I think it is being redefined about what those words of taste and quality mean. And so, yeah, I think the consumer packaged good industry has to play a role in it, just the reality. And so, yes, starting a beverage company was a pretty controversial thing to do, uh, especially one that wasn't just like a little flavoring, and just like sparkling water with a little flavoring, one that has real flavor, can compete as a full calorie. I mean, sorry, as a full flavored beverage with lower calories. We took some heat for it, frankly, because people advocates who are more pure being like, none of this food should exist at all. And I like I in an ideological way, I don't disagree with them. But in a pragmatic way, you look around, it's like I'd much rather, a 17-year-old reach for this than a Mountain Dew, or frankly, most of the stuff that they're consuming. And that's just the pragmatic reality of how over time we can move our country and younger people to better options that aren't undermining their health. And that's there's no hardcore right or wrong. I think it's going to take all sort of approaches and perspectives to move us forward, but that's the one we chose to go down.
Yep, and I think it really ties back to the points that Dana made about the taste and the cost and the convenience, right? Because I am that consumer. Honestly, I like sweet stuff. I wish I didn't. Like, yeah, I mean, and like I've definitely have been like pretty overweight at different times in my life, and someone would like look at me and be like, "Why don't you just drink water and like eat salads all the time?" Like, I don't know, I can't though, for whatever reason. Even if I should be able to do all of that, I can't, and I want something sweet. And actually, it makes a big impact for me if I can have a soda that is not as bad as the stuff that's out there, but still satisfies whatever I feel like I need to indulge with, but is that just like healthier? Because I'm gonna do that. So give me a better option. Great. Like, yes, because I'm not just gonna sit and drink water all day. It's just not who I am, unfortunately. So I really do believe in giving people better options than the stuff that they would choose. And I also think it is a really interesting time the last 2 years to be looking at what's happening right now in the overall diet. I think a couple things that stand out to me. One, Coke Zero switching from the black can to the red can. Like, whoa, all right. They see the writing on the wall here. They're looking at the data. They just, crowned Coke Zero and then had this advertising campaign that was quote unquote the best Coke ever question mark. Right. So I think they see that the full octane Coke is not growing as much.
Can I just say as an aside to just it's an interesting sort of symbolic milestone about where we are. Like when we were in the White House, and I had many conversations with Coca-Cola, they would not show an image of Red Can Coke in the same image that Diet Coke or Coke Zero was in. They would never be pictured in the same shot. They would be totally separate. And it was James Quincy, the CEO, came in after Muhtar. It was a huge deal when he said, "We're gonna put them all in one ad." Red Can in front, Diet behind, and Coke Zero behind that. Was always Red Can was always the hero, but it was inside of Coke, it was a raging debate. It was like World War II in there about, is that a thing we should do? And now for them to switch actually Coke to red means that, like, it is the market is changing, and they're seeing it pretty quickly.
And yeah, and it is changing so fast. And I think, things like Poppy and Olipop that have caught on, well, I mean, those things are just going to continue to grow. And sometimes the biggest impact that brands like that can have is actually forcing the biggest players to change, right? Which is where you do
Oh, for
see
sure.
Coke Zero going red. And I think also, I think I read maybe last year was the first year that the obesity rate actually started going down. Maybe it's GLP-1, maybe it's a bunch of those other things, like probably all kind of contribute. But I think it's an interesting time right now. Like they're just things are starting to change a lot. Obviously, the current administration has some views around what's healthy and what isn't as well. So there will be changes. I hope we all get healthier, regardless of who gets the credit and who actually does it. I hope I do. I hope everybody does.
It's not about credit. Don't get me started on that, but we'll leave that for another day.
All right. Hey, Dana, just to wrap up here, I just wanted to get your advice to some founders because a lot of people test through you. You see the kind of messaging and stuff that's on their cans when they launch. I wonder if there's anything that you see consistently that you could recommend to brands based on all the testing that we've done and what brands want people to think about their brands versus what people actually think about their products. What is some advice that you would give them specifically around their product and the packaging and how they portray themselves to consumers who aren't gonna get the benefit of talking to them at Erewhon or in Pittsburgh or whatever to hear that full, beautiful story about their upbringing and why they started the product. Just specifically, what's gonna go in the can and on the can.
Oh, man. I think Sam said it well when he said you have to meet your customers where they are. So the maximum effort that you can do to really understand your customer in early days, it's farmers markets, it's demos in stores, etc. Later down the line, it's more robust consumer research. But get to know your customer because you need to be able to tell your story, but it needs to land. And what consumers care to listen to, what consumers remember, what consumers even read with their very short attention spans. It's a game of trade-offs. You only have so much space on the front of pack. You only have so much space on the can. You have only so many seconds in an advertisement. And you really need to understand what those trade-offs are and what you are the must-haves versus the nice-haves in messaging. Whether it is brand level, mission level messaging, or it's product level claims and attributes. It's always a game of trade-offs, and so just go in eyes wide open of understanding, if you put X on there, what is your consumer gonna think? If you put Y on there, what is your consumer gonna think? Um, it is highly competitive, and you only have so much space and time to capture a consumer's attention.
All right. So if people wanna maybe check out what's going on with their product using Highlight, how can they do that? What's a good way for them to follow up?
Yeah, well, you can always email me directly. I'm happy to chat, dana@letshighlight.com, or go to our website and book a demo. Would love to show you our software. Spend more time giving more specific advice based on your category, your subcategory, your use case. Um, I know we keep saying, you have to get really tailored, but it is because based on your audience, based on your stage, based on the question at hand, based on the timing of when you're entering the market, what you need to do to get it right is gonna look very different.
You know what I wanna do is test some of the old products that have now become successful that went through a huge change. So, I've seen those Celsius glass bottles from, like, 10 years ago or whatever before they took off. Let's test them both and just see what actually people say about them. Let's get the Mother's which was Poppy before it rebranded, right? And run tests on those both and just really see what the differences are. All right, stay tuned for those results, people. Okay, Sam, just to end with you, can you just let everyone know what's a great way for everybody to follow along with PLEZi, the journey, support you all?
Well, right now, we are on the West Coast, and so at Albertsons and many of your more well-known retailers out there. So please, if you see PLEZi, buy it. That's a great start. Follow on social media. PLEZi is all over social media, of course, as every brand must be in the modern era. And then we'll be expanding, pretty dramatically in the next year, nationwide. At least that's the plan. Uh, and and look, I think in the end, both for PLEZi, but I care about the world as well. I think for consumers, any of us who are buying products, we should be choosing products that are, trying to do a better job on health and especially on climate change and sustainability. And there's plenty of greenwashing out there, and I know there's some cynicism, and there's some reasons to be cynical. But if everybody just started buying products that have those claims and those attributes, it's a lot easier than to get the companies to start doing what they're saying they're doing than get them to say it at all. And we can start to send a really powerful signal that this is the future that we are demanding. And that's so I wouldn't even worry as much of whether you think it's like legit or not. We need every product that gets tested at Highlight should come back like if you have a sustainability, claim or attribute, you're gonna dramatically outperform those who don't. And we're starting to see initial signs of that, but nowhere near the level that would sort of equate to like, a transformation of the products that are coming to market. So I would encourage all of us, as eaters or purchasers of goods to look for that. And then as founders and entrepreneurs, you got to keep these things in mind. It's definitely the right thing to do. It's definitely the right thing for business, certainly over the middle and long term. And I think doing the hard work to figure out how to have higher quality, more environmentally friendly products is going to outperform those entrepreneurs who aren't doing that hard work. And so, I think we all can win if we start on both sides, for both product development and purchasing. Prioritize those qualities.
I love it. And I've seen the data from NIQ that talks a lot about how when people learn about the brands with sustainability claims, it really helps, especially on repurchase. Because I think, they buy it and then they learn a little bit and they feel good about it and they can identify with the brand and then they want to keep supporting them. And they'll tell their friends, like, hey, do you know that actually they do this? So awesome. All right. Well, hey, I want to thank both of you so much. This has been a super interesting discussion. I still have a million questions, so hopefully we'll get to do it again someday. So thanks a lot, and thanks to everybody for listening along.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you loved it, I would so appreciate it if you could leave us a review. You could do it right now. If you're an Apple Podcast, you can scroll to the bottom of our Startup CPG podcast page and click on Write a Review. Leave your company name in there. I will try to read it out. If you're in Spotify, you can click on About and then the star rating icon. If you are a service provider that would like to appear on the Startup CPG podcast, you can email us at partnerships@startupcpg.com. Lastly, if you found yourself grooving along to the music, it is my band. You can visit our website and listen to more. It is superfantastics.com. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.